finger is hovering right above that pledge button. And you're like, no, mustn't push. Hey guys, it's good to be back. Sorry I've been gone. I've been very, very sick. So I apologize. I'm still nasally. I've still got a little bit in me and I'm a bit like foggy headed. So I might say something dumb. So I apologize for that one, but we're just going to have a best crack at it anyway. So we're talking about crowdfunding, and the reason this sort of came to my head was because I was sick and I had nothing to do but scroll through all the crowdfunding campaigns that are on Kickstarter and GameFound, and you know, you get yourself in this precarious situation where there's so many games you want to get. And I just thought a list of 10 different ways to avoid the FOMO or to overcome the FOMO I thought might be really good discussion topic. So I thought, yeah, let's do that. And before I get into this, I don't want to say anything negative about crowdfunding in general. I think the idea of crowdfunding in board gaming is very, very important. You know, there's a lot of indie board game designers that never would have come to life if it wasn't for the opportunity that Kickstarter and GameFound creates. So it is a necessary thing, but as time has gone on, the marketing tactics that they employ can feel a little bit, you know, like you have to get this right now or you're going to miss out type of thing. So I think it's important that as consumers, we also have to protect ourselves as well. All right, let's get into my 10 ways to overcome the FOMO. The first thing that you need to do, and this is probably the most important rule that you need to follow, and that is never borrow money. Don't do it. It's a trap. It's not a good idea. And I'm sure a lot of people are quite sensible when it comes to this. They don't borrow money. You might be saying, oh, you know, they also have that interest-free method on GameFound where you can just do the repayments. But I also don't like that one because you don't know what your financial situation is going to be in a few months' time and stuff like that. So in general, if you have the money to spend, then that's fine. But borrowing money, spending money that you don't have, that's rarely a good idea. So be sensible with your money and make sure you don't make any mistakes that are going to hurt you in the long run. The next tip I want to talk to you about is play your mates' games. This is a social hobby after all, and we all have our own collections. It doesn't make sense at all for you and your best friend to own the same game. It makes no sense at all. What's the point? Because I'm going to go to your house and we're going to play one of our copies. So that other one is just sitting there collecting dust. So talk with your friends. If there's something that you really want to back, that's fine. Talk with your mates. Maybe someone else is getting it and all of a sudden you don't have to anymore. So that's something to consider. What are your friends backing? Another way to beat the FOMO, have some sort of limitation on your collection. That way you're never getting more games than you really feel like you should have or anything like that. And what I mean by that is maybe your limitation is you can't go any further than your Kallax. Like me behind me, I've only got one Kallax full of board games, and if it doesn't fit on the shelf, I can't get it. And as you can see, those shelves are starting to overflow, but they are on those shelves, okay? So as long as they're sitting on those shelves, I can keep them. But otherwise, I've got to get rid of them. And you know what? It's not such a bad thing to have this limitation, because what you'll find is you'll start to discover that there's games that you don't play. And you could actually be offloading those games, getting a little bit of money back, and that can be funding the new games that you're interested in. All right, the next tip to beat the FOMO. Remember, great games get reprinted. So you're never really gonna miss out. If a game is fantastic, it's wonderful, it's all, you know, the best thing since sliced bread, right? If that's the case, then the publisher is gonna be absolutely insane not to print it again. So you're not gonna miss out. So you might as well let everyone else be the guinea pig and try the game out before you. And if it's a dud, you don't get hurt by it. If it's good, well then you just get the second printing. Bob's your uncle, you're all good. The next thing I want to point out is that these games take a long time to fulfill. Years, sometimes several years, okay? Are you still going to be as excited as you are right now when that game comes? Because sometimes the answer is no. Sometimes you forget about the game. There are some people out there who back tons of games and then they actually forget what they've backed, and they have these packages arrive on their doorstep and they don't even know what it is. So are you going to be as excited as you are right now when you're clicking that button as you are in a few years' time? Because if not, then maybe you shouldn't back. My next tip is, do you really need all of it? And when I say all of it, I'm talking about those all-in pledges with deluxeified components and playmats made of neoprene and all the expansions upon expansions that you're probably not going to play anyway. Be real. How many times have you pulled the game off the shelf, looked at all those expansions and went, well, I know how to play the base game. I don't know all this other stuff. I'm just going to stick to that. It's happened to me several times. I can admit that much. And I'm guessing a lot of you are probably in the same boat. So do you really need all that stuff, or are you happy just with the core game? My next tip is, do you have the will, the time, and the play group to get these games played? So there are games out there that might look fantastic, but maybe your play group just isn't interested in a really heavy Euro. Or maybe that party game isn't a good fit for your play group. They like the heavier type of games. So really think about your play group, what's going to mesh well with them, but also what are you willing to learn? There are some games out there that looked really interesting to me, but when it came down to actually going, oh, do I want this game? Would I be willing to go through that thick rule book to learn all these rules? And sometimes it's a no. Sometimes these games can be overly complex, and that can turn us off a bit when we've already got so many rule books in our brains. Also, a time commitment that a game brings. Some games can take several hours to play, and maybe you just don't have that time to commit to one single board game. There are games on my shelf that I really want to get played, but my mates, they're not interested in these long games. They want to get something medium played. So it can be very tough to get those bigger, longer games played. The next thing I want to bring up is the secondhand market. A lot of these games you can get sometimes cheaper after the game has just come out because someone's bought it, they've opened it up, they've given it a try, and it wasn't their cup of tea. So they've moved it on, and sometimes for much less than what they paid. So you're getting a little bit of a saving there. On top of that, you can also get a bit of an idea as to how the game is received. You can see some reviews after the game has come out in its final form. Is it really going to be worth your time and money? You don't know that during the campaign, but when the final product comes out, it's very quick to see whether the game is worth your time or not. The next point I want to bring up is the gameplay overlap. In your collection, you probably have a lot of games that already do what this new game is promising. Do you really need another hidden movement game? Do you really need another trading in the Mediterranean game? Another area control game? I could go on. There's a lot of games, and a lot of them have a lot of similarities between them. So do you really need that new one? Is it going to do anything really special? Is it really going to change that mechanic for you in a way that's really meaningful? Most of the time the answer is no. Sometimes it's just the newer, shinier thing. And my final tip is, are you getting the bang for your buck? You might spend $400 on this deluxeified beauty of a game, right? But then you only get it played 4 times, which if you divide that by 4, you're only getting, your plays are costing you $100 each. Now that's insane. Would you really spend $100 to play someone's board game? No, of course not, right? So you need to be asking yourself that question. Is it going to be worth the financial investment that you're putting into the game? Now, if you can get it played more often than that, then great, that's awesome, all right? But if you're only playing it a handful of times, it's very much not going to be worth that price point. Now, if you need help keeping track of this, there's a really awesome app, BG Stats. It's got a function in it called the cost per play challenge. Now, if you don't know how to access this, you need to check out my video telling you about how to use board game stats. Well, that's my list. Everything that I could think of when it comes to trying to overcome the FOMO. If you have any more helpful tips, share them in the comments below. I think a lot of people will get a lot of help from that. Anyway, thanks guys. Have a good one.